Hey everyone, it's your girl, Brick City Brown Chick. Welcome back to the show. This week, I would like to talk about a topic that I'm sure is on practically everybody's mind, which is the US presidential election, which, as I tape this, is in merely 3 days. I have no illusion or disillusion that we are going to know who won this election by 8 p.m. Tuesday, midnight Wednesday, 8 a.m. Wednesday. I think it'll probably be several days, as what happened in 2020. I think the election was on the 3rd and it wasn't officially called for Joe Biden until the 6th or the 7th. So I anticipate that is how this election will be as well. I heard a great response to how people were feeling the other day when a commentator said they were nauseously optimistic. And I have to go with that. That is exactly how I feel. I am ready for this to be over. It seems like it has gone on for years, even though Kamala Harris has only been in the race, I think, 102 days or 103 days. It feels like months and months and months, and I'm really ready for this to be over. What I want to talk about today is a topic that I've talked about before, but it keeps coming around because it keeps showing itself in really ugly ways. And that is American racism. I'm talking specifically in this case about the ugly, horrendous, disastrous, fill in the blank word, insanity that happened at Madison Square Garden last Sunday. It was grotesque, it was racist, it was misogynist, it was nasty, it was just horrible. People keep calling it a Nazi esque rally, and I agree. And I think that was the point. Watching several white men and one very delusional black man named Byron Donald get on the stage and talk about how horrible Kamala Harris is, that she's unintelligent and dumb, and to make up her ethnicity, like Tucker Carlson did, to make fun of who she is and where she's from, and to say she's not exceptional, was just the latest and clearest display of how racist and delusional right wing America has become. I've heard a lot of people say this week that you shouldn't call the 60, 70, 80 million people that support the former president racist, because not all of them are. Here's the thing. If you hang out with racists, if you hang out with wannabe Nazis, if you hang out with people who say things like America is for Americans only, this goes back to something my parents told me as a child. You are the company you keep. It's very, very simple. If you hang out with these people, if you believe what these people say, if you fear for America's future if Kamala Harris wins because she is a woman, because she is a woman of color, because America has never had a woman president, you are racist. You are misogynist. And if you're not ready to admit that to yourself, that's fine. But it doesn't mean the rest of us aren't going to tell you, because it's just fact. I have heard some of the most disturbing things come out of the mouths of 45 supporters that I have ever heard in my life. And honestly, never expected to hear. Things that my mother, who just turned 90, used to hear in the 1950s and 60s. I have heard Kamala Harris called a bitch, called a black bitch, called the C word, as in see you next Tuesday, figure that one out, and a bunch of other things that just boggles my mind. The way Kamala Harris is demeaned and hated and called out her name when she has never called anyone from the other side out their name is proof that America has accepted its racist place in the world. That it doesn't matter what people of color do or what women do. That white men, and a lot, unfortunately, of white women will only see this country as America for Americans, meaning them, not meaning anyone else. One of the most disgusting things I heard come out of that Madison Square Garden rally was Dr. Phil talking about America was built on hard work and not on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's the right's new boogeyman, is DEI. I found Dr. Phil incredibly hypocritical. That's not the first time that's happened, but just also absolutely stupid, because he's ranting about how people get ahead because of hard work and not because of who they know or because of laws put in place to help them get ahead when they have historically been left behind. It always makes me laugh because it's sad, but also just blows my mind when I hear white men drone on about how terrible DEI is. With Dr. Phil, it's especially sad, pathetic, and infuriating because no one would have any idea who Dr. Phil is if it wasn't for a woman named Oprah Winfrey. Now, for those of you Gen Z folks who are too young to know this story, where Dr. Phil came from in the first place is he was a psychologist in Texas. And he was mostly a psychologist that would advise clients in court. Oprah Winfrey, many, many years ago now, was sued by the beef industry because it was during one of her many diet phases when the Oprah Winfrey Show was still on television. And she had said she had sworn off beef because beef was bad for you and it wasn't healthy. And because of the hormones they put in cows, she was not going to eat beef anymore. Well, the beef lobby took that to be a throw down the gauntlet situation, and they decided to sue her over what she said. So the trial was in Texas. I honestly don't remember why. It may have been where the beef lobby was. More likely, it was because that's where they filed the case. And she heard good things from people she knew about a courtroom advisor who was a psychologist named Dr. Phil McGraw. And so she hired him to be her consultant. And she ended up winning that case. And she liked him. She thought he was charismatic and interesting. And so she produced his talk show. She had him come out, do a few episodes, the talk show come on, and that is why everybody knows who Dr. Phil is. So for him to stand up in a, let's all call it what it was, white supremacist rally and talk about hard work was just infuriating. The other piece of that conversation that is always bothersome is listening to white men talk about the hard work that America was founded on. They are right about that to a point. What they mean is the immigrants came here, worked hard for what they had, built wealth, built generational wealth, blah, blah, blah. That's what they mean. But the other part of that story is slaves, my ancestors and the ancestors of millions of other Black people, were dragged here in chains and put to work for those white people to pick their crops and take care of their children and do all these other tasks, including, as Michelle Obama said, build the White House, and were not paid because they were owned, because they were slaves. So to imply that people of color have not worked hard for where we are is bullshit. And I get really sick and tired of white men wanting to stand on a pedestal that their ancestors worked hard and that my ancestors didn't. The difference is their ancestors were paid and mine were owned and slaves. And it's gross and it's disgusting. And as a woman now in my mid 50s, I have reached a point where I am no longer afraid to say what needs to be said and to call a spade a spade. And that rally was grotesque and disgusting. And I am beyond furious. But what I hope the result is that Kamala Harris becomes the next president of the United States. Because as she keeps saying, this hatred and divisiveness is not serving any of us. The former president is running to stay out of jail. He really doesn't care what happens to anyone else. And I don't know why this is a hard concept for people to understand, because he's proven time and again that he is the most selfish person to have ever lived. It is always, always, always about him. It is not about anyone else. And why you would want to elect a man for the second time who does nothing for you and who this time is promising to be on a revenge tour instead of bringing the country together and making improvements in people's lives is totally beyond my comprehension. I have heard a lot the last few weeks about undecided voters, and it makes my head want to explode. I don't understand what there is to be undecided about. You either want to continue democracy or you want to let this man blow up what remains of the country. I do not agree with Marjorie Taylor Greene on anything else. But the one thing she said a few months ago has really resonated with me. She said, maybe it's time for us to become red states and blue states. And that might be the best solution to this problem. Because if the former president wins, blue states, we are in a world of hurt. He is going to take his vengeance out on us broadly because we dared not to vote for him. If we have catastrophes, if we have hurricanes, if we have tornadoes, he's not going to send any federal money because he thinks because we didn't vote for him, we don't deserve it. It's insane. And the fact that so many people support him again just shows how much America wants to embrace its worst angels, its greatest evil, which is slavery. That if it was up to the people in Madison Square Garden, they'd take us right back to slavery. Not even Jim Crow. We pass go on Jim Crow and go back to slavery because they don't think people like me have earned what we have, even though I have earned everything I have, including every gray hair that's in my head right now. So, what I want to say is, America, I hope you make the correct choice and choose to continue this experiment that is democracy. But if you choose not to, those of us who chose to continue democracy will know immediately why you made a different choice and what your alternative choice means for the rest of us. I want to thank you for listening to this week's episode, and I will be back next week, hopefully in a good mood. We'll see. Take care. Bye-bye.